There is a kind of tiredness that never shows up in the body. It shows up in the eyes. Susan washed the same dishes every day, folded the same laundry, wiped the same floor, and still, no matter how much she did, her home never felt at peace. It wasn't a lack of effort, it was a lack of method, and more than anything, a lack of silence. If you feel like you're always cleaning but never resting, if you end the day exhausted while your home still feels unfinished, friend, the problem isn't how much you're doing. The problem is the absence of a structure, spiritual and practical, that can hold your home together. Today, you're going to discover the hierarchy of peace, a system of 5 silent routines that turned Susan's home from a place of constant exhaustion into a space of real rest. And more importantly, you're going to understand why each of these routines actually works, psychologically, strategically, and spiritually. Unlike most organizing content you've seen before, this video won't just hand you a checklist. It will show you the why behind every habit. Because women who understand the root of their exhaustion are the ones who sustain real change, while those who only follow random lists slide right back into chaos within weeks. Stay until the end, because the 5th routine is the one that holds everything together, and it's the one most women overlook completely. Welcome, friend. Welcome, mother, working both outside and inside the home. Welcome, woman, carrying the weight of caring for everyone and everything. Here at Graceful Routine, we believe in one simple but profound truth. A home is built in the spirit before it shows up in order. We're not here to teach you how to clean faster. We're here to teach you how to clean with less anxiety and more purpose, because organizing without inner peace is just repeated labor. And today, through Susan's story, you're going to learn 5 silent routines, silent not because they're quiet, but because they're born from a place of calm instead of panic. And this isn't only her story. It's the story of a whole household learning together. That peace at home isn't something one woman carries alone. It's something a family builds side by side, habit by habit. Maybe you're watching this while folding laundry, or waiting for your coffee to brew, or in those few quiet minutes before everyone else wakes up. Wherever you are right now, I want you to know, you are not alone in this. Thousands of women watching this video feel exactly what you feel, that no matter how hard you try, the house never seems done. And that's exactly why this journey isn't going to teach you to do more. It's going to teach you to do things differently. Grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and let's begin this journey together. Before touching a single broom, Susan had to change something invisible, her mindset. For years, she woke up straight into her to-do list. Bed, coffee, school drop-off, work, dishes, dinner. Her mind never had a single second of silence before being swallowed by the chaos of the day. And that is exactly where domestic anxiety is born. Not from the mess itself, but from the absence of an emotional center before facing it. The psychological reason: when you start your day reacting, your brain shifts into survival mode. Every disorganized room becomes a threat. Every pending task triggers another spike of cortisol. You're not just tired from cleaning, you're tired from living on constant alert. The strategic method: Susan adopted what we call the 0 point, 5 minutes before any activity, sitting in silence, no phone, no task list. This small space, based on the Kaizen principle of small continuous improvements, resets the nervous system before the day starts demanding anything from her. The deep biblical foundation. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." This isn't just an invitation to physical stillness, it's an invitation to trust. Susan understood she didn't have to control every detail of her home alone. There was a greater strength holding her steps. That spiritual relief gave her the emotional fuel to keep going without breaking down. Family collaboration. Susan began praying briefly, out loud, with her children before school. Not a sermon, just one sentence of gratitude. Over time, that one sentence became the emotional tone of the entire household. At first, Susan resisted the idea. Sitting in silence felt like wasting time when there was so much to do. But on one particularly chaotic morning, when everything seemed to fall apart before 7 a.m., she realized something. The chaos wasn't in the house. It was inside her, and the house was simply reflecting it. That was the day she decided to try the 0 point, even without fully believing in it yet. The first few days felt strange. Her mind kept racing toward the to-do list. But little by little, those 5 minutes of silence became the most important part of her day. Not because they fixed anything in the house, but because they fixed something inside her. And a woman at peace inside makes different decisions than a woman in panic. She cleans differently. She responds to her children differently. She sees the mess as a task, not as a threat. Susan noticed that small tasks kept piling up until they became mountains. A cup here, a shoe there, a forgotten piece of mail, all of it building up silently until it exploded into a generalized mess that left her with no energy to even begin. The psychological reason. The build-up of small unfinished tasks creates what psychologists call residual cognitive load. Your mind keeps processing, in the background, everything that's still pending. That creates mental fatigue, even without any visible physical effort. The strategic method, based on the 5S principle of Seitan or ordering, Susan adopted a simple rule. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, it gets done immediately, never postponed. Putting away a cup, hanging up a towel, closing a drawer. This eliminates build-up before it ever becomes a visual and emotional weight. The deep biblical foundation, Ecclesiastes 9:10, reminds us, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. It isn't about doing everything at once. It's about being faithful in the small things, in the moment they appear, instead of postponing what's already within reach. Family collaboration. Susan taught her children to apply the same rule to their own things. A shoe out of place, a toy on the floor, handled in seconds by whoever left it there. The house stopped, depending on her alone. She remembers exactly the day she understood this routine. It was a Sunday evening, and looking around the living room, she realized there was no single big mess. Just dozens of small things out of place, each one insignificant on its own, but devastating together. She sat on the floor exhausted and thought, I don't have time to deal with all of this at once. And she didn't need to. The solution wasn't a massive weekend cleaning effort. It was never letting these small things pile up in the first place. That shift in perspective was freeing. Susan stopped postponing the, I'll put it away later, and started acting in the exact moment a task appeared. Weeks later, the result was a home that never again needed a big cleaning day, because order was maintained minute by minute, without weight, without build-up, without that constant feeling of falling behind her own house. Every home has an entry point, the door, the hallway, the kitchen, where everything piles up first: bags, coats, shoes, mail. Susan realized this specific zone was the one generating the most anxiety the moment she walked through the door. The psychological reason: the entry point is the first visual contact with the home environment. When it's chaotic, the brain associates coming home with arriving at a problem, which prevents relaxation even after a long day away. The strategic method: Susan created a decompression zone, a basket for shoes, a hook for bags, a tray for keys and mail. Everything had a fixed place, so nothing required a decision, only a habit. This is SERI, the sorting stage of the 5S method. Every object with a defined place eliminates repeated decision fatigue. The deep biblical foundation, 1 Corinthians 14:40, teaches, but everything should be done in a fitting and orderly way. Order isn't rigidity, it's an invitation to rest, a structure that supports peace instead of suffocating it. Family collaboration. Susan's husband and children naturally started using the same system simply because following the order was easier than ignoring it. One person's discipline became a quiet example for the whole household. Susan remembers coming home after a full day of work and feeling her chest tighten just from seeing the entryway covered in scattered shoes, dropped backpacks, and piles of paperwork on the side table. That moment, which should have felt like relief coming home, instead became the trigger for another cycle of irritation and exhaustion. She realized she needed to protect that very first moment because it set the emotional tone for the entire evening. That's why the decompression zone became, for her, more than organization. It became an act of self-care. Her space designed so that the moment she walked through the door, she would meet calm instead of another problem to solve. Over time, even her children started hanging up their backpacks on the hook without being asked, simply because the system made that easier than tossing the backpack on the floor. In the middle of the day, when tiredness starts to build, Susan used to simply push through. No pause, no reflection, until night arrived and she collapsed exhausted, with the house still feeling incomplete. The psychological reason, the lack of intentional pauses throughout the day, leads to what we call silent cumulative burnout. You don't feel the exhaustion coming because you never stop to notice it until it overwhelms you all at once. The strategic method, Susan introduced a 3 p.m. reset, 10 minutes where she visually reorganizes a single space like the kitchen table or the living room couch and reassesses what's still left in the day. This is a direct application of Kaizen, small course corrections, rather than trying to fix everything at once at the end of an already exhausting day. The deep biblical foundation, Lamentations 3:22-23, speaks of God's mercies that are new every morning. Susan applied that same principle to her own afternoon. You don't have to wait for a new day to start over. You can renew yourself in the middle of the journey without guilt over what hasn't been finished yet. Family collaboration. When her children came home from school, she invited them into those 10 minutes as a family pause, putting things away, organizing, talking about their day. The household task became connection, not just a chore. Before this routine, Susan's afternoons used to blur together. She moved from one task to the next without ever pausing to notice how she was actually feeling until around 7 in the evening she'd realize she was irritated, exhausted, and out of patience, without ever understanding exactly when it had started. The exhaustion seemed to come from nowhere, but in reality, it had been quietly building since noon. The 3 p.m. reset changed that. Those 10 minutes were never about making the house perfect. They were about giving her own mind a breath in the middle of the day's storm. She learned that small, frequent pauses prevent collapse far better than trying to push through until nightfall. And the most beautiful part is that this pause, which started as a personal strategy, turned into a family ritual, a moment where mother and children met in the middle of the day, even if only for a few minutes, before each one moved on to their own tasks again. Here is the routine most women skip, not because it's difficult, but because it feels less urgent than all the others. And yet, friend, this is exactly the one that holds everything else together. Susan noticed that even while following all the other routines, she still went to bed with her mind racing, replaying tomorrow's list. The house was organized, but her mind was not at peace. The psychological reason, the human brain needs a clear closing signal to enter deep rest. Without that signal, even in a physically tidy environment, anxiety stays active internally, disrupting sleep and emotional recovery. The strategic method. Susan created what she calls the 9 p.m. ritual, 15 minutes before bed in complete silence, where she turns off the main lights, leaves only a soft lamp on, and does a quick visual check of the house, not to clean but to close the day with her eyes. Alongside that, she writes 3 things she's grateful for in a small notebook. This conscious closing is the final application of 5S, Shitsuke, the discipline of keeping the system alive every single day, not just once. The deep biblical foundation. Psalm 4:8 says, "In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." That verse sums it all up. The peace in Susan's home didn't come only from physical order, it came from the certainty that she could rest because she wasn't carrying everything alone. Family collaboration. Susan's husband began joining this moment with a short prayer together before bed. The children, even at a young age, learned to put away just one toy before going to sleep, the early beginning of a habit that will carry their own peace into the future. Susan says this was, without a doubt, the most transformative routine of all, and the hardest one to keep. Because at night after a full day, the temptation is always to collapse onto the couch, into the phone, into pure exhaustion, with no closing ritual at all. But she realized that without this conscious closing, all the work of the day dissolved into a restless night and a next morning that already started tired before it even began. The 9 p.m. ritual became, for her, a gift she gave herself every single day. 15 minutes where nothing needed to be solved, only acknowledged, thanked for, and released. She discovered that writing down 3 things she was grateful for, even on the hardest days, completely changed the way she fell asleep. It wasn't about pretending everything was perfect. It was about remembering every day that there was reason for gratitude even in the middle of exhaustion. And it was exactly this night routine that gave structure to all 4 others. Because organizing the morning, keeping small tasks in check, protecting the entryway, and pausing in the afternoon mean very little if the night keeps ending in silent collapse. The 9 p.m. ritual is the thread that ties the entire hierarchy of peace together, the final point that turns effort into real rest. Look at the Susan from the beginning. The woman who woke up in a panic, rushed through dishes, went to bed with a racing mind, and never felt like her home was enough. Now look at Susan today. She still works outside the home, still has the same children, the same house, the same responsibilities, but something has changed deeply. She no longer lives in reaction to chaos. She lives held up by a silent structure, built habit by habit, prayer by prayer. The difference was never about doing more. It was about doing things with more purpose, less rush, and the certainty that she wasn't carrying this journey alone. And this transformation was never hers alone to build. Her husband's evening prayer, her children's small habit of hanging up a backpack or putting away a toy, none of it was just helping Mum. It became slowly the family's shared language of peace. A home is never built by one woman's strength. It's built by a household learning together. That order and rest are something everyone gets to take part in, not a burden one person quietly carries for everyone else. Today, when Susan walks through her front door, she no longer feels that tightness in her chest. When she wakes up, she no longer feels that dread of an endless list. And when she goes to bed, she actually rests, because she knows she did her part and let go of the rest. That is the true definition of a peaceful home. Not the absence of tasks, but the presence of a structure that holds you up, even on the fullest days. And that's what we want for you too, friend. Not a perfect home, free of stains, free of mess, free of life happening inside it, but a home where you can breathe, where order serves you instead of the other way around, where the silence you cultivate within yourself naturally becomes the silence that holds up every room in your house. If you made it this far, tell me in the comments, which of these 5 routines are you going to start today? The morning 0 point, the 2-minute rule, the decompression zone, the 3 p.m. reset, or the 9 p.m. ritual? Write just one word: peace, order, rest. Whatever you need most right now. And here's something you can actually do today. Grab a notebook and write down the one routine you're starting this week. Or even better, take a quick photo of your own 0 point corner or your new decompression zone and share it on your stories, tagging Graceful Routine. Let this be more than something you watched. Let it be something you actually started. Remember, you don't need to implement all 5 routines at once. Pick just one to begin this week. Practice it until it becomes natural, effortless, and only then add the next one. The peace we're building here isn't a race. It's a walk, one step at a time, exactly the way Susan walked it. And before you go, let me leave you with this. May the Lord build your home, not by your own strength, but by His. May every room in your house reflect order, and may every silence you find in this routine become an encounter with the peace only He can give. If this video blessed you, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with another woman who needs to hear this today. See you in the next video. Go in peace.